All right, what's up? Welcome in a rapid reaction edition of GC Live. Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark. Probably won't go our full, 45 minutes to an hour today, but did want to hop on with the big news, breaking news earlier this afternoon from South Carolina. LaNorris Sellers named the Gamecocks starting quarterback. And Chris, let's just get right down to it, man. I would say, obviously, this is sort of the expected outcome. This is what most of us believed, assumed, presumed, however you want to say it, was going to end up being the case. But still, of course, noteworthy that LaNorris Sellers is now officially your starting quarterback at South Carolina. Plays you want. I don't think it's quite to that point, obviously, but I do think in terms of just empowering your guy, like, hey, take control of this team. Like, this is now your team. And Beamer, I think basically alluded to the fact that, hey, at this point, they could play other quarterbacks, but they are going to do everything they can to get LaNorris Sellers ready to go run this football team. And, I think there are quite a few distinctions. Like, I know in social media world we're in, not to be old guy yells at clouds, but we don't like to make distinctions. And no matter what you do or post or put online, somebody's going to have something to say about it. And, to me, though, there's a clear distinction between, and my reaction is because of the number of people, which is fine. Nothing wrong with it. Opinions are opinions. But when, we posted the news from Beamer, people say, well, who else was going to be the starting quarterback? Or that's not breaking news, or that's not news. First of all, when the head coach announces a guy is the starter, it is news. It 100%, it just is. It is news. But I think there's a huge difference. There's a distinction between you are the starting quarterback by default and acknowledging you earned the starting quarterback position. The reason why people were so, I would say, confident that Sellers was ultimately going to win this thing, and it was going to be difficult for anyone else to pass him, was because the people who have kind of started to hear about and been able to watch him behind closed doors and saw him in high school, they just know what this kid is capable of. Like, they know what his upside is. They know how driven he is and that he's a hard worker, that he's an even kill guy as well. So I think it's kind of not fair to Robbie Ashford. It's not fair to LaNorris Sellers either to just sort of be like, well, of course he's the starter. He was always going to be the starter. Was he the favorite exiting the spring? Was he the favorite entering camp? Yes, he was the favorite. Beamer said that publicly. But did they give the other quarterbacks every opportunity to go compete for this job? Did they make Sellers sort of go through that trial by fire, like go through the process and come out of the other end as the guy? They absolutely did. And that doesn't mean he was perfect. That doesn't mean he never made mistakes in practice. That doesn't mean he's going to go out there and throw for 5,000 yards this year. It just means that he earned the start. So I think it's just unfair to all those guys to just be like, oh, well, yeah, of course he won the job. Who else? He earned it. Ashford competed. Ashford, by all indications, Chris, went about this thing the right way. Beamer told the story about how Sellers made a big play. Ashford is the first one off the bench coming to congratulate him in the scrimmage this past week. That's the type of competition you want. It's the type of room you want. But kudos to all those guys for going through this the right way. And I think excellent timing on Beamer's part here as well.
Well, and to go back to your original point there, I would have expected some of the snarkiness. Of course, but Beamer has declined multiple times to name a starting quarterback. He was asked, 2 days ago, and declined to name a starting quarterback, and in fact said, I need a couple days. It took a couple days. Now he's named the starting quarterback after reviewing the film of the second scrimmage, et cetera, et cetera. And, sometimes you hear, hey, there's a competition, or you kind of keep a competition going for the sake of saying you can have one. I think this was more than that. Lenoris Sellers, as talented as he is a first-year guy. Robbie Ashford's actually played more college football than LaNorris Sellers. He's played more games. He's started more games. He's taken more snaps. He's been at 2 schools, played for 2 different schools. So he brings some experience. And legitimately, people who watched him this preseason have said he's done some good things. Like Beamer said that, and you might, some fans, the same ones who are saying that's not breaking news, they're probably going, he probably hadn't done anything good. He's just saying that. Legitimately, people I've talked to said, yes, he's done some good things. And to your point, he's handled it the right way. Beamer made that analogy today about him supporting Lenoris for throwing a big touchdown pass in practice. I've heard some other anecdotes about how Robbie's handled himself. This was why it was so, I think critical to get a guy like Robbie Ashford, a guy like Davis Bevel. You got not one, but 2 guys who are going to be your backups who have, sat on the sideline and encouraged their teammates and been a backup. Guys that have started football games. And South Carolina has a couple of those guys. So in this day and age, that's pretty valuable to have. And Robbie Ashford and Bevel have been there to kind of continue pushing in this competition. Not that Sellers, he's a guy that I think is pretty well self-motivated. It's not like he needed that kick, but it doesn't hurt to have it. And so I think everybody kind of made each other better during the process. You're right. We all anticipated this happening, but it is newsworthy that it has happened and at the time in which it has happened.
Yeah. And so Bevel, a guy, man, that I think, let's be honest. If he's your third team guy, appears he is, then if he's playing, then that means things have either gone really bad or they've gone great, and you're getting him in there. So you hope it does not get to that point, but I think it is valuable to have a third string guy that has played some ball. Sort of just even by him coming in as a walk-on, Chris, to me, it shows he accepted a certain status just for the opportunity to come here. And the news comes out today, he is now on scholarship, which I think just speaks to what he has done. We heard in the summer, hey, this Davis Bevel kid, like, he throws a good ball, like, he's done some good things. That doesn't mean he's pushing for the starting job, but gives you a little bit more clarity, or a little bit more confidence, I should say, that if he were to have to go in there at some point, that, he could hang in there for you. And so I think, for one, congrats to him on going on scholarship and opportunity to play for his home state school. Got to be pretty special. And so Big Red asks, is Ashford officially the backup? I'd have to go back and look at Beamer's quotes. I don't want to misquote it, but he is the backup. When the depth chart comes out on Monday, fully expect it's going to say Sellers, Ashford, Davis Bevel. That'll be the order. That's how they've kind of operated. And that'll be that. But now, Chris, how about, let's sort of turn the page, what this means, what happens next, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, with the reaction from Sellers when Beamer told him, and how about he basically just said, okay.
Yeah.
And then this was at practice today. Then he just got back to work.
Not a surprise.
Is that not the most Lenoris Sellers? That summed up Lenoris Sellers in one sentence, I thought.
Yeah, I would have been shocked if Beamer was if he would have been asked how did he react, if he was like, Lenoris is really excited, I would have been like, really? I fully think, this is a guy that's just, he's in the post-game press conference, just sitting back, chilling, kick back. That's just kind of how he is. A very low-key guy, so not surprised at all. It's funny.
That's an awesome story. For people that maybe haven't paid attention to every little detail of the offseason and who he is as a person and player and all those things, I thought that was a perfect story just to give you an early idea of who your quarterback is right now. And I want to get into expectations, what this means moving forward. But first, we didn't tell you in the open, so let me tell you about our buddy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797. You see it over Chris's head there, the NMLS number 71597. And as always, all we ask is that if you are in the market for a home, or if you are maybe considering being in the market for a home, you're going to need a mortgage more than likely. Hit up Clint. If you're not in the market, then don't call Clint unless you just want to talk Gamecock football. But give him a chance to earn your business. Support those who support us. 803-422-6797. So I think, Chris, the other idea, the other thought in my mind of doing this now is, so if you're Beamer, I'm sure you wanted to tell the guys and give them some idea of where they stand, because you're not in a game week yet, but you are going to be working on ODU some this week. So just in terms of logistics and how do you split things up, how do you lead this team? Now I think that's a little different. Like, if you want to get nuanced, the way you lead this team is maybe a little bit different when you're the guy versus you're competing to be the guy. And so then you may say, well, all right, just do it internally. Just tell the guys who's the starting quarterback. What happens then is you don't get to sort of, at that point, like we talked about, the depth chart comes out next week. People are sitting there question, well, hey, why haven't they named a starter yet? Well, then the depth chart comes out. If Sellers is number one, then you're saying, well, all right, I guess that means Sellers starts. But you're not speaking to it until Tuesday if you're Beamer. If you put an or, you're like, we're taking this thing all the way down to game day. You put an or, then it becomes almost a distraction when it doesn't have to be. So I think by doing it today, as Beamer, you get to tell exactly why. You get to frame it up, which you could have done it privately and still had all the other advantages. But if it leaks out to one of us or one of those national media people and somebody else breaks the story for you, which would be possible, then it comes out from them and you don't get to explain all your reasons. You don't get to give your thoughts on it. So that's why I think you handle it that way. But I think internally, logistically, it just makes sense as you turn the page from preseason type of things in practice to game week types of things in practice. You want to be able to tell 16, hey, you're our guy. You run this team. You take command of this offense. You may not be a rah-rah guy naturally. You may not be a huge talker, but we want to empower you to go in there and be the leader we know you can be within this program.
I was very curious, Wes, to see, and I said this on the radio show earlier. Did I officially predict it, or did I just say I think Beamer will say it? I can't remember. We'll check the tape on that, actually. But I was very curious to see if Beamer would say Lenoris is the starter, but Robbie's going to play. And you can leave that open-ended, honestly. That can mean Robbie's going to play, hopefully, if you're beating Old Dominion by a few touchdowns in the fourth quarter. That can mean Robbie's going to come in and run some stuff against Kentucky in the second quarter. I can mean whatever you kind of want. As it turned out, he kind of split the difference, and I'll explain what I mean. He said Lenoris is the guy. He talked about Lenoris. He also talked about Robbie Ashford and Davis Bevel. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I think he said they're going to help us win football games, right? So now there's, again, you can mean a lot of things by that. He was asked specifically about Robbie Ashford. Will there be some packages for him? And he said, we'll see. It's possible. Depends week to week. So he didn't say, and he even went as far as to say, like, we're not going out there rotating quarterbacks every 2 plays. We're not sending guys in and out, splitting series. Basically Lenoris is the guy. Could you see Robbie? You might see Robbie in a situation. You might see Robbie late in a game, whatever it may be. Didn't really give any details, but I did think that was interesting. We just got some clarity on how he handled that. And I think everything that he said in the press conference did give kudos to the guys who also competed but didn't win this job, but also pretty clearly, I thought, showed that Lenoris won the job and he is the guy. Now, you mentioned kind of turning the page and leadership for Lenoris and how he can lead. I go back to, I can't remember which guy said this. Might have been Kason Henry on the Garnet Trust Hour, but he mentioned that Lenoris had done a really good job during summer workouts. Some of the different things they were doing in the weight room. One of them was having the quarterback call out the cadences on some of the different exercises they were doing. And he really lauded Lenoris for how much leadership and ownership he took there. So is it a little bit different now? Do people look to Lenoris even a little bit more and say, okay, there's no doubt that's the guy? Is Lenoris, as low key as he is, kind of further empowered by that? Probably so. And you get to go into game week with everybody externally and internally knowing this is the deal. This is how we're going forward.
Yeah, and everybody kind of knows their role at this point. And if you're Ashford, is it, I'm sure, disappointing? Yeah, of course it is. Like, every competitor wants to compete, but and wants to be the guy, I should say. But now you get to go in, hey, my role now is the backup. And I got to support Sellers, but I got to be ready if my name is called, if my number is called, if I am Robbie Ashford. So, Chris, all right. The question we have asked ourselves really all offseason, we're running out of time to answer this one. I think it's up to us most of the time to try our best to accurately depict expectations.
Okay. Yep.
How do you fairly present expectations for someone who, talent-wise, we're talking talent, upside, ability, potential. Just those things. Talent-wise, probably possesses more of those things than, let's say, just about anybody that's suited up at Carolina. Let's not go extreme and say, oh, he's more talented than any. We'll all see. He's definitely, potential-wise, up there, right? But has never had the SEC spotlight on him. Has not been the starting quarterback. Is a redshirt freshman. Threw 4 passes last season. Now, did he check some boxes in that little bit of time? Absolutely he did. Were we all sitting there looking around like, what the? Like, that throw against Furman. Talk about a flash play. Like, you hear people talk about, oh, he flashed. That one, you're like, this guy just walked off the sideline and did that in his, like, first real action. What did I just see? But again, redshirt freshman. Lots of questions around him, too. An inexperienced offense around him at some places, or at the very least, experienced wide receivers, but that are new at your place, right? How do you fairly frame that up? If he goes out there against Old Dominion and looks like a freshman, people are going to say, oh, you overhyped this guy. If he goes out there against ODU and looks like Cam Newton, people are going to say you undersold him.
Or that's what he's going to be against Kentucky the next week.
Well, and
the rest of the season.
For his sake, I almost hope he just has a solid day against ODU.
That's right.
Because I know how it works around here. If he goes for 5 touchdowns against ODU, it is going to go into whatever is above hyperdrive for the hype machine. So I ask you, how do you frame that up?
Well, it is hard to have perspective on these things, but if you think about it, so one of the guys that people are comparing Lenoris to, and not that they're that similar in play style, they're both dual threat, but Connor Shaw, right? Like, he's best quarterback in school history. That's what most people agree with that, certainly in the modern era. And you think about it, Connor Shaw's trajectory is a little bit different. He walked into a situation where South Carolina had a guy who had started a bunch of games. South Carolina doesn't have that this year. But just for perspective, I mean, Connor Shaw got some playing time as a freshman. He won the job in 2011 against East Carolina over Steven Garcia, got benched in that game. Came back a few weeks later, 2 weeks later, played against Kentucky, threw for 300 yards, 67% completions, 4 touchdowns. And then the rest is history. We know what happened with Connor Shaw, right? You think about other guys across college football. Johnny Manziel redshirted. He won the Heisman. He's one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in college football. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. Sorry to bring him up, but he was really good. Former 5-star, number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Did not win the starting job. Didn't start game 1. Played in game 1. Ended up being the guy. So the point is, early in careers, guys have to take steps. And so there will be probably, I don't know for sure, I think there will be some moments where LaNorris Sellers does look human and make some mistakes. And that can be this year as a redshirt freshman. It can be when he's a junior. His talent level makes it to where it is very hard not to get excited about him right now and looking into the future because, Wes, there's a lot of guys that have been around ball a long time. They know ball. And they have seen some of the best players up close and personal, played against them, coached them, played with them. These same people have seen Sellers, and they put his talent level in the company of some of those guys. So when you hear that, you go, ooh. And then you kind of see some of the glimpses we've seen and look back at high school. All that's a very long-winded way and a filibustery way of saying, like, you can have, I think it's fine to have expectations for him because of his talent level. It's different than if we were walking into this thing going, well, I mean, I don't know, somebody's going to win the job, and somebody will be out there and we'll see how it goes. We've seen that situation here, right? At South Carolina. This isn't one of those, but you do have to keep the proper perspective that no matter what happens in game 1, there's going to be some growth for a guy like Sellers, even as talented as he is.
Yeah, man. And I think how much of this ultimately also will come down to something we have talked about quite a bit on this show. What is the game plan on offense? How much of this thing is truly on his shoulders? And I tell you, man, my one of my favorite things about football is the number of variables that can affect the answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
And is this defense as good as we think it is? That may seem like it is a completely unrelated question, but it's directly related because how much they have to ask the offense to do and what they have to ask it to be when you talk about complementary football is completely related to, is this a good defense? I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked, Chris, if it's not a good defense. Your question gets back to what we always talk about as like levels. Is this a great defense? Is this an elite defense? Like, where, does the defense stay healthy? I know they have depth, but you want to keep that depth and keep rotating guys in and out. So, if this is a great defense and Rocket is who we think he is, and the offensive line sort of continues to gel together and is an improvement over last year, then I'm not saying Lenoris isn't going to have to throw the ball. He still will have to do some things. But you can keep it a little bit more conservative. You can not ask him to do so much. The sort of, it's almost like a scale here. If the defense is a little less than what we thought, or the running game isn't quite what we think it might be, then it's, they got to put a little bit more on his arm. If you can beat teams by playing defense and playing keep away and running the clock and running the ball, that is one way to win football games. Look, the other side of that, how much are they going to be willing to run Lenoris? We know that Lenoris is just the threat of running creates a potential advantage in how they have to defend you. He's going to run the football. We know that much. That some of those things will be like we talk about the Connor Shaw, it's 3rd and 4 and he runs for 5 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You drop back on 1st down, you have a shot play called. It's just not there. Or maybe it's a concept he's not quite comfortable with yet. He's not fully committed. Do I throw the ball in that window? Nah, I'm just going to take off running, live for the next down. That's going to happen. But how much zone read, how much, speed option, inverted veer, QB power, how much of that stuff are they going to be willing to run? You start getting past that, how much of this passing game is going to be a more, let's keep him comfortable, let's keep it not simple. None of this stuff is simple, but let's go RPO. Let's only read one side of the field. Let's only do the concepts he's completely 100% comfortable with versus I'm Dow Loggins. I'm wanting to get this kid ready to ultimately be an NFL quarterback. I have a deep array of passing concepts within my overall playbook. How much of that am I going to say, Lenoris, we're going to let you drop back, read this defense, progression 1, 2, 3, 4, full field reads, go throw the football. This is a kid that can absolutely throw the football. He's not a dual threat quarterback that really is kind of a code for, he runs first, but people have to be wide open for him to throw the football. That's not who he is.
It's not.
He can throw the heck out of the football. But with any quarterback, that's only apparent. That's only true. That only happens when they are comfortable with what you are asking them to do. So I think all of our questions about expectations for Lenoris ultimately move back to what is going to be required of him to win football games, and how does Dow Loggins approach this offensive scheme this season.
And that's another thing that I love about the game. And I think that's something that if you're a South Carolina fan, you can be excited about, because there is, more than a lot of other seasons, an unknown aspect, but not an unknown necessarily in a bad way. You've got some unknowns of what could this look like and maybe how good could it be? And you have some new and exciting personnel to plug into those things. And Wes, I have more thoughts. Before, should I tell all the 769 friends on here about some of the promos we got going on at Gamecock Central, maybe?
As long as you give us more thoughts after.
I will. I promise I will, but I felt like it was a good break point. Special offer. This one's YouTube only, or wherever you're on streaming, frankly. So we won't limit it to YouTube. $1 for your first 2 months. So obviously that'll get you Wes Mitchell's coverage, my coverage, if you think that's half decent, and everybody else, the full team on GamecockCentral.com, the Insiders Forum, $1 for the first 2 months of coverage. So obviously that takes you up to the Old Dominion game and past it. Use the code SCAR1. All you got to do, go to GamecockCentral.com on your computer, your tablet, your mobile device. Go up to the top right, click join if you're not a member, code SCAR1. $1 for your first 2 months. Or if you already want to join us for even longer, here's our kickoff sale promotion. 50% off an annual. So you can spend at least 1 year with us at Gamecock Central. 50% off your first year. Promo code for that one, kickoff24. I just wanted to let everybody know about that one. Great way to support our work at Gamecock Central. Get yourself access to all of the content we do. We'd appreciate it, and we'd love to hang out with you on Gamecock Central as well. So the exciting thing, Wes, I think about it is, you've mentioned the names. You've got a new quarterback who's super talented. You've got Rocket Sanders coming to town, plus other backs. You've got, what do we think? Probably a couple new starting wide receivers, at least. You got a talented 5-star true freshman offensive tackle. You've got a 5-star edge. You've got most of the key pieces of your defense coming back, plus some other key pieces from the portal that you've put in. And you're kind of you're building off of, hopefully, what you did in the month of November, which was pretty darn good defensively. You've got aspects like, we don't really know what the offense is going to look like in some regard, but I start thinking, Wes, about some of those situations that have been so frustrating last year when Carolina was last in the SEC in rushing. It's 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2. And you're sitting there in the stands or you're watching on TV going, honestly, I have no idea what you call here. You don't feel great about anything in short yardage. You're either in 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, not feeling great about running the football. You're not feeling great about running the football on early downs, or you're in 3rd and long. I think Tyler Head, our co-host producer on the Game West, USC's average down and distance on 3rd down in SEC play last year was 3rd and 8. That means you can't run the football on early downs. So now you start thinking about it. Maybe South Carolina can run the ball in early downs. Maybe it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, and your 240-pound quarterback says, I'll take this. Or Rocket Sanders says, I'll take this. And so you start to envision this thing getting better. Now, they still have to go do it. My point is, even though there's unknowns, so many different facets, all 3 phases really of the game, there are some reasons to feel potentially excited about this thing beginning against Old Dominion.
Yeah, and I think at times, Chris, the offense is going to be up and down. Like, I think, you not that the scrimmage tells us everything, because it doesn't. But I think you look at what we have learned from the scrimmages, it feels like, especially that second one, there were some big plays. There were some great moments. There were some pass plays down the field where guys made plays. But were there also some drops? Were there some plays that were eliminated by penalty? Were there some like procedural issues? It sounds like it. So I think that's why, to me, the onus is on this defense to keep giving you opportunities if you are on offense for South Carolina. And, I think much like we kind of talked about on the radio this week with the defense or with the offense in this running game, if they run all over ODU, that really doesn't tell us anything. But if they get stuffed by ODU, that may tell us a lot. If the defense holds ODU to 7 to 10 points, I think that'd be a good early sign, right? Like, it's not nothing, but that doesn't also mean they're going to be great against SEC competition. It's just one little piece of early season information. However, if they give up, 500 yards and 31 points and it's a shootout, that may tell us something that none of us want to hear, I think, early on in the season. So as with anything, we'll gather all the pieces to the puzzle and keep putting it together. I'm still very curious. I was writing and I had to get on and off the press conference. I know Beamer talked a little bit more about the wide receivers and what that looks like.
Yep.
I still think, Chris, did he name he didn't name a top 3 or top 4 or 5 or anything like that, did he?
Unless I totally zoned out and missed it, no. He did say one thing that was interesting, and it was asked about in the comments very early. I won't be able to go back and find it at this point. Lots of great comments, questions today. Gage Larvidan. We were talking about this earlier this week, and that there were times in the spring where if you were to pick a receiver on the roster, hey, who's creating the most buzz? It was Gage Larvidan. You get into preseason and you're not hearing as much. I know you and I have kind of wondered about that. We've asked about it. I've had some people here ask about it. You've heard more about, Dre Jacobs. Jared Brown is one that's certainly made some strides and created more buzz. He said that Gage has actually been dealing with some little nagging injury things that have prevented him at times from being 100%. So I think that's a pretty good answer as to why we haven't maybe heard quite as much about Gage during the preseason. But other than that, I don't recall hearing anything he did talk about Mazeo Bennett. Said Mazio's going to play a lot game 1 and throughout the season, which, I know you and I, Wes, both agree and we're on the same page. Mazio's got a really great chance to be a starter, I think, game 1. But regardless, he's certainly going to factor in a lot this year.
Yeah, and that's something with Larvidan that, from what I've heard, man, maybe plagued him a little bit in the summer as well and sort of just slowed his overall progress. So that certainly does kind of answer a question, though, that I think a lot of people have. Hey, why is this name not popping up at this point after consistently being talked about throughout the spring, I should say. But all right, y'all, this was supposed to be a rapid reaction. We're sitting at 36 minutes. I guess we had a lot to say. Luke said, is it a concern if we don't cover the spread versus Old Dominion? Minus 20. Is it minus 20, Luke? I don't even know if I've looked at that. No, I don't know if it's a concern. It kind of depends on how it plays out too, right? We'll start to get into, certainly very soon, we'll start to get into this actual matchup and what it means. Early on, I can tell you all this. Diving into my trusty Phil Steele, Chris, you never know what to expect from Old Dominion. Like when they're expected to stink, they've been okay. When they've brought a lot of guys back and there's been expectations, they've been not good. So who knows? They're picked, I think, 6th out of 7 in their side of their conference, I think. Or 7 out of I don't even know who's in the conferences anymore, y'all. I really don't.
So Wes Mitchell says Old Dominion, because of that, will be the best Group of 5 team in the country.
Could be, man.
Wes via Phil Steele. So tweet at both of them and let them know what you think.
They did beat Virginia Tech a couple of years ago. So there is that.
That will be referenced. You think Beamer's going to bust that out? Yeah, in the team meeting. Hey, guys.
No, opening statement next Tuesday. Put that on your bingo card.
That is a definite. Yes, that's a free space on the bingo card for sure.
Yeah, free space. All right, y'all, we're going to get out of here. Shout out Clint Hammond. Shout out to everyone who joined us. A little impromptu show here. We'll be back at some point this week. We're still working through exactly what our schedule is going to be for live shows for the regular season. But we hope that will be something where we can give y'all a set time of, hey, here's who's going to be home. Here's what time. Here's what days, all those things as soon as we sort of work through it. So be on the lookout for that. All right, y'all. Appreciate you as always. For Chris, I'm Wes. This has been a rapid reaction GC Live edition talking LaNorris Sellers in the South Carolina quarterback room. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you soon.